hit like, and subscribe. You're watching the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel.
Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School. Every night here on the channel, we host Night School, where we break down the most controversial subjects, the most important conversations, the most contested debates going on in the world today. And tonight is no different. We have a lot to talk about. As you see from the ticker, we're going to talk pop culture later in the show. We're going to talk about Drake and his battle with Universal Music. We're going to talk a little bit about the inauguration. We're going to talk a little bit about this reparations bill or this reparations report that's coming out of the West Coast that doesn't seem very promising. But before we do any of that, we got to talk about Gaza. In particular, we have to talk about the fact that a ceasefire deal has been reached. That's right. Earlier today, a ceasefire deal was reached in Gaza between Israel and Hamas. Palestinians all around the world, in fact, people all around the world are celebrating what seems to be the most promising moment, certainly the most promising day in the 400 plus days that there has been a war in Gaza, as they officially say, as we say, a war on Gaza and a genocide in Gaza. Palestinians are celebrating because Hamas and Israel, with the support of Qatar, with the support of the United States, have come to a truce date. Now, many of you, when you think of a ceasefire, you think of a stoppage of war immediately. You think of immediate peace. No, that'd be too easy. No, the truce is set to take place on Sunday, January the 19th. Now, that's important because this isn't just a technicality. This isn't just a legal maneuver. Israeli forces are continuing to attack right now. In the Gaza Strip, at least 30 Palestinians have been killed in the enclave since the agreement was reached. Hamas official Izzat Reshek says that the deal reached in the capital of Qatar, Doha, meets all of the Palestinians group's conditions, including the full withdrawal of Israeli forces, the return of displaced people to their homes, and a permanent end to war. This sounds great. What's interesting, and what my next guest and I are going to talk about, is how we got here. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he hit the stage, he hit the dais, and he wanted to thank some people for making this happen. He wanted to thank U.S. President Joe Biden, which he kind of has to do. But he also thanked President-elect Donald Trump, and according to sources, it's Donald Trump who made the phone call that got this across the finish line. Not Joseph Robinette Biden, but Donald John Trump. And so that will be interesting to follow. It'll be interesting to make sense of. But in the meantime, I want to bring in my guest, one of my favorite people. She is a journalist. She's a Palestinian. She is a person who has followed this very closely at the policy level and at the personal level. Rula Jebreal, thank you so much for joining us in Night School.
Thank you, Mark. So good to be on with you on a night like this where, yes, there's 30 people who are killed, but we have hope tonight that maybe the missiles will stop raining on Palestinian children, at least from Sunday.
That would be an amazing feat. How surprised were you that we reached a ceasefire at all, and certainly at this particular juncture in history?
I actually wasn't surprised, Mark. I've been recently in Doha, and I've been talking to diplomats from the region who were telling me 2-3 things. One of the things that told me that Trump wanted a win from day one. He wanted a win. He's a transactional president, and he wants to get in and take off this topic from the table. He doesn't want, there's 2 things. There's America first idea that we don't want any more to pay $18 billion to Israel or Ukraine, etc. So there's this component, and there's advocates in this component in his surroundings. One of them we know very well, Tucker Carlson. Others obviously have different ideas. But the interesting thing that for almost 8 months, since May, Joe Biden would not put pressure, refused to put any pressure on Netanyahu and his government because he wanted not to tarnish his legacy. Joe Biden is ideological. He is a really committed Zionist. He wanted to exit this the White House as the most pro-Israeli president who did everything in favor of Israel. That was what he cared about. He didn't care about the Palestinian being slaughtered or starved to death. He didn't care about any of that. So he was unwilling to put any pressure. And actually, Arab diplomats were telling me that the only time there was any pressure is when Donald Trump sent to Israel from Doha Steve Witkoff, basically an oligarch, to tell Netanyahu, get this done. And Prime Minister Netanyahu obviously had his series of demands. We will see in the coming days that there's basically a basket of gifts. There's a bag of gifts that he received in order to get this ceasefire deal accepted in Israel. Remark, apologies.
Sorry about that. I said it's been my argument to my audience and publicly, that Donald Trump didn't want to see a long-term deal made before he got close to office, and neither did Netanyahu. That this was always prearranged to make Donald Trump look like a hero, to make Joe Biden look feckless and weak, and to get Netanyahu some extra goodies for holding out long enough to make Donald Trump look like the superhero. Am I being am I a conspiracy theorist? Am I being too cynical here?
No, actually, you are very accurate, and you read the reality for what it is, not in the delusional way that people in DC and in New York are trying to sell this as an achievement for President Biden. It's not let's be clear. President Biden's legacy is written in Palestinian children's blood. His legacy will be the genocide in Gaza. Whatever he wants to talk about in the future, whatever he achieved, people will always judge him for his failure, for his catastrophic Middle Eastern policy that put a target on America's back, that slaughtered and led to the mass slaughter of Palestinian children, that ultimately isolating Israel and got Israel to be now accused and on trial for plausible genocide. So, but Donald Trump also, we understand that Donald Trump received $100 million from Miriam Adelson during the election campaign. He promised her the annexation of the West Bank. He used that card, obviously, but also he used other elements in the negotiation with Netanyahu. Netanyahu understands that Trump is unpredictable. He understands that he cannot play games with Trump the way he really played games with Biden. He wanted certain things. My understanding, he got most of the things he wanted. There's no sanctions for any terrorists, Jewish settler terrorists in the United States. There's no sanctions on the ISO, which is the company that created Pegasus, which is the surveillance technology that led to the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. There's no whatsoever. He will be also getting all kind of goodies. Above all, the annexations of territories and theft of land in the West Bank. And my understanding, he also is getting some kind of deal with Saudi Arabia. We don't know how this will play itself out, but he was promised that Trump will pressure the Saudis to get some kind of normalization deal. Well, that's a separate topic. My understanding, the Saudis are unwilling at this juncture to do anything unless there's something for the Palestinians on the table as well.
So you raised a couple of really important points, and I'm glad you did, because, when Kamala Harris was running against Donald Trump in the presidential election, the argument was Kamala and Joe Biden, they've obviously been awful on this issue. They've prosecuted a genocide, they've at least supported a genocide. Donald Trump can't be any worse. But it seems like maybe he could be. I mean, when you talk about annexation of the West Bank, which was not on the table for any U.S. president in recent years. In fact, we've been, as a country, chiding people, criticizing people, sanctioning people, or at least abstaining from protecting Israel when they do talk about settlement expansion or violate international law. But now Donald Trump, there's a lot of talk, as you pointed out, that maybe there's a backdoor deal to support the annexation of the West Bank. How realistic is that? Sometimes Donald Trump says stuff like, I'm going to build a wall between here and Mexico, and it doesn't mean anything. Other times he says things and they happen. Do you see the annexation of the West Bank as a viable possibility?
Sadly, yes, Mark. Not only that, I see also another piece which is, I believe Israel will start exporting its Gaza policy to the West Bank. In the last 3-4 weeks, multiple ministers, including Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, and others, said that for any attack or violent attack from Jenin or Nablus, we will transform the West Bank in Jenin and Nablus the way we transformed Gaza. I must say, I was shocked to my core that basically a doctor, the president of the hospital in Haifa, Rambam Hospital, he is, the head pediatric doctor. He tweeted something, and it shook me because it's a hospital where most of my family were born. People who are, my family members work in that hospital. He tweeted and said, "You celebrated our massacre, and now you get the Nakba." And then he tweeted the picture of Rafah. So we are seeing in the Israeli society elements where Palestinians are totally dehumanized, and people who are reasonable, normal people actually wants a genocide, wants ethnic cleansing, not only in Gaza, but in the West Bank and later on in Jerusalem.
One of the things we see is actually a delay in the start of this peace deal to Sunday.
Yeah,
we're seeing lots of violence going on in Gaza right now, specifically lots of Palestinians still being killed. My concern is that with that type of violence, there will be resistance and there will be retaliation. And I'm not worried about the resistance. I support the resistance in arms in self-defense. What I'm concerned about is that the ceasefire will get off to a rocky start, and that Israel will use Palestinian resistance as a pretext or an excuse to say they violated the deal, and we're off and running back to where we were again. Like, how likely is it that this will stick?
Highly probable what you're saying that materialize. I just want to cite that not only the massacre in Gaza is happening now as we speak, Israel wants to seal this deal with Palestinian blood. For the Israelis, the idea of victory is not defeating Hamas. Just to be clear, it's how many Palestinian can they kill? It's the whole idea of thinning the population, the whole idea of creating disastrous condition to force Palestinians either to flee or to create, or to encourage them to immigrate. It's the sentence that Minister Smotrich used very often. But as we speak now, tens of settlers actually stormed tonight, again, a village in the West Bank called Hawara, and they're protected by the Israeli army, and they're now burning homes and attacking Palestinians. So we're seeing that the settlers are basically another arm of the government trying to provoke violence, so the army can say, "Oh yeah, Palestinians throw a rock on us, or somebody fired a bullet. We have to exterminate them." And yes, I fear like you that the Gaza doctrine will be implemented elsewhere.
One more question for you. You talked about, on this matter, I have another question for you. You talked about Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, to their credit, and there's lots of things that are critical of Saudi Arabia, but they've stood pretty tall the last year. So there's been no normalization, no deals until there's one, until this genocide is over, but two, until as you said a moment ago, up to the Palestinians have something substantive on the table. What will it take? What does substantive look like at this stage? What will make Arab countries, or maybe even Palestinian leadership, feel like there is something tangible on the table, and not just another Oslo, not just another promise, not just another kick the ball down the field, but something real?
Look, I agree with you. I give credit to Saudi Arabia. I think their foreign minister has spoke eloquently and clearly, and their leadership. I mean, I believe MBS, who said that Netanyahu need to be held accountable for the crimes that he's been committing in Gaza. I mean, one thing is clear, Mark, the whole region, including Saudi Arabia, that is a leader of that region, understand that Israel represents at this point a threat, not only to Palestinian survivors or the Palestinian existence, but they're a threat for the stability of the entire region. Look what they've done in Syria. Look what they've done in Lebanon. Look, they unleashed violence. There's mass radicalization, as Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, said. You can see that they have no care for the stability or security or safety of anybody, including their own citizens who are there willing to shoot unarmed as they escaped from Hamas without a shirt, holding white flags. So the Arab region understood what Israel stands for today, which is domination, violence, but not only dominating the Palestinians, they want to dominate the region. So I think the Saudis, for the first time, probably in a long time, they saw clearly what the Israelis are stand for. However, the Saudis are also will negotiate hard with Trump. They will try to extract something for themselves, probably some kind of an arms deals, nuclear technology, etc. But also, I am confident that they will try to extract sovereignty, statehood for the Palestinians, and in turn, they will put, and this is, I am sure of that because I've been talking to many diplomats around the region, they're willing to guarantee, take from Netanyahu what he, his propaganda tool, like our security. They're actually willing to put troops in Gaza to guarantee securities. They're willing to rebuild, to reconstruct. So they are going to dismantle his propaganda saying, well, I don't know if you remember Ayman Safadi, who stood up at the United Nations. He's the Jordanian ambassador. And he said, we 57 Arab and Muslim countries are willing to guarantee Israel's security on one condition, and the genocide and the occupation, comply with international law. And Netanyahu basically dismissed him. I think Trump also wants something else we are not mentioning. He wants a Nobel Peace Prize. And exactly. And he thinks that Palestine will give him that.
He, I hate to say it because he doesn't deserve it, but he just might get it. I mean, when I look at who's gotten peace prizes before, I mean, Obama's gotten one while dropping Predator drones on people. It's not hard to get a Nobel Peace Prize. And when he brought Jared Kushner around last time, when he brought the Abraham Accords around, it was very clear he was thinking about legacy. He wants to say, I created peace in the Middle East. You're right.
Yeah.
Yes. And the optics of this, it's really nasty underneath, but the optics of it are going to look good to a lot of people, unfortunately.
Look, Kissinger got it, and we know what he did.
Oh my God!
Exactly, and okay, if Donald Trump can deliver on Palestinian statehood, sovereignty, I would lobby for him to get a Nobel Peace Prize. If he can get, he can end the military occupation that's been choking, decimating our lives and our existence for 58 years. Well, if he can get them to withdraw from the occupied territories, all of them, to the 67 borders, I would be the first one to champion for him to get the Nobel Peace Prize.
Look, right. If there's a free Palestine, a legitimately free Palestine with contiguous land and potable water and sovereignty and security, I'll fly there and hand him the award.
Yeah, but look, and you know what? Whatever reasons, whether selfish reasons, transactional reasons, ego reason, I do not care. I want this mass slaughter to end. I want babies in Gaza not to be butchered anymore. I don't want to see beheaded babies starving to death. I don't want to see the bodies of people, dismembered and burned alive. We cannot see anymore these kind of atrocities in the 21st century. Gaza has been transformed into cemetery for children, but also it's a graveyard for international humanitarian law and international legality and the reputation of Western democracies.
Absolutely. I want to turn before, and I know you have to run. You're a very busy person, and this is like, when something like this happens, the Palestinian, journalist corps are very active, and I always feel bad because I don't want to overwork you, but I also want to make sure.
No, please. I am free for another 30 minutes. Go.
Okay. Go. I'll steal you for another 10 or 15.
Please, perfect.
One of the things that actually caused us to speak earlier today, before there was a ceasefire, before there was anything, was a kind of new trending topic in these political streets, in these Middle East streets, and it was about racism.
Yes.
I've seen this so many times, both this tactic and this specific claim. a video is going around TikTok, and the
Yeah.
video basically is saying that Gaza is defined by racism. That 11,000 Palestinians live in a neighborhood, a ghetto, a literal ghetto. They're forced to live there in this place called Abid, which means slave, and that Black Palestinians, Afro-Palestinians, etc., are treated as second-class citizens in
by
Gaza.
Israel, yes.
Yes.
By Israel, yes.
They say in Gaza, they say Hamas, they say non-Black Arabs are non-Black Palestinians, just good old-fashioned regular Palestinians treat Afro-Palestinians and Afro-descendant Palestinians poorly. And then they also somehow connect that to what happens in Jerusalem, where they say that the African quarter there, the African people there have endured racism.
By Israel.
I love how you keep saying by Israel, because that's an important piece. So let's take a step back and first just help me understand, or help the audience understand, what actually is happening here. Are Palestinians of African descent, Afro-Palestinians, Black Palestinians, people who look like you and have your origins, are they treated poorly or wrongly in Palestine?
So I am an Afro-Palestinian. I am telling you, the propaganda that you're talking about that's circulating on social media is fake. It's not true. It's propaganda. I know now. I honestly read about Israel basically giving a budget of $150 million to rebrand their image. I did not think that they will start with Black people. I mean, I did not think that they will start with Afro-Palestinians. These are the reality. For my entire life, I lived in a neighborhood where the Afro-Palestinian community that you, Mark, visited in East Jerusalem, that neighborhood is called Bab al-Majlis. Bab al-Majlis, the door of the Majlis, which is the Majlis, it's the community, the place where we welcome people. You know what Israel called that place? The slaves' prison. This is, we call it as Palestinians, Bab al-Majlis, they call it the slaves' prison. The Israeli IDF positioned itself outside the neighborhood. I don't know if you remember when you visited, from one end and another end. Constantly, they attack my community on a regular basis. You know what they call us? And since I was a child, I heard these words, kushi, which is an equivalent to the N-word. Every day I heard this word, basically not only towards me, toward my father, my family, my entire family. The other word they throw at us is Arabim, Arabs. And guess what? Very often, racist Israelis storm my neighborhood, especially during the Flag March. I don't know if you ever heard of the Flag March, where the hundreds of racist, violent Israeli Jewish settlers storm our neighborhood, protected by the IDF. And you know what they chant? Death to the Arabs, death to the Palestinians, and all kind of degrading language, especially towards women, Another thing that I think is very important, my neighborhood in East Jerusalem, not only they arrested many of my friends and my family members for simply being Black, but also very often they stopped my dad, who was very frail, even as he was going through his chemotherapy. And very often they will make him wait, lose his appointment at the doctor's, or drop his basically ID card on the floor in the winter because they wanted to see him on his knees. They killed our neighbor who was 19-year-old, Usama Jadde, who was actually running, not armed, nothing. He was rushing to donate blood and that was during the Second Intifada. But there's also something else. It's not only to Black Palestinians. They do the same thing to Ethiopians, Jewish Ethiopians. For many years, basically African refugees in Israel were called by ministers and public officials cancer, infiltrators. And then Israel had to admit publicly that they were injecting Ethiopian Jewish women without their consent and without their knowledge of Repro Vera, which is to sterilize them so they could not have children. You know, the birth rate of the Jewish Ethiopian community, the Jewish Ethiopian Black community in Israel is 2%, the lowest of any other community, because for years, Israel policy was to inject these women, to sterilize these women without their consent, so they would not be Jewish Black babies. So I don't want to hear anything about how Palestinians treat Black people. Yes, there's some idiots sometimes that would say, you know, like in any society, but there's no systematic discrimination. This I reject entirely, this whole idea that we live in ghettos, that we're discriminated against. Yes, we're discriminated, all of us, against by Israel, by a state that was called an apartheid state, by the United Nations, and by every human rights organization, and by the International Court of Justice. And you know what? This, I wanted to come on air as a Palestinian, as an Afro-Palestinian, to specifically speak of this issue, because the thing that really upset me more than anything else, they're trying to use, again, Black Palestinians to sanitize and to basically whitewash their genocide.
That seems to be a big part of this for me. It's that at a moment where Palestinians are being killed indiscriminately in Gaza, and Black people, just like everybody else around the world, is saying, hey, this is wrong. It's almost as if they're saying, hey, Black people, stop worrying about us killing them because they don't like you that much.
Yes.
My thing is, even if every Palestinian in the world were racist, that's still they're not. But even if they were the worst racists in the world, that doesn't give Israel the right to commit genocide. So it's obviously just a wedge issue. Now, the truth is, to your point, I have not experienced that. I have spent the last 10 years back and forth in your community in Jerusalem, and I've seen a lot of things. I've heard a lot of things. And like you, I've heard a few idiots here and there, and I've heard Arabs refer to the neighborhood as Habs al-Abid from time to time. But in general, it's referred to as the African Quarter. In general, it's referred to as Bab el-Majlis.
Bab el-Majlis.
Yeah. In general, the racism that Palestinians or that Afro-descendant Palestinians talk about, whether they live in Jerusalem or Jericho or Haifa or Akka or Gaza or anywhere, they say the racism they experience is as Palestinians. They've been racialized as Palestinians.
Yes.
And they are treated as second-class citizens, not because of their Blackness, but because of their Palestinianness.
Yes.
And I think one example that I'd love for you to talk about for a second is those Ethiopian soldiers that you mentioned. People used to think that somehow the Ethiopian Israelis and the Afro-Palestinians would just be like hanging out, having beers or having dinner together. And it's like, no, one is an occupier.
Yes.
One is on one side of the green line, the other's on the other.
Yes. And may I add something? This 2 years ago, I went to my sister died, and I went to the funeral to bury her. And I remember at the arrival at the airport, there was this Ethiopian soldier. And I remember, he was looking at my passport, and I could see, he could not withstand my gaze and my look. And he asked me the reason for my visit. And I said, you're holding an Israeli passport. Do you ask every citizen why they come here, or only people who look like me, or only people Arab? So he was shocked that I threw at his face that. And he said something like, are you accusing me of racism? I said, yes, I'm accusing you of asking a racist question that you would not ask another person. Anybody ever asked you when you come back to the country, what's the reason of your visit? He said, yes. And that's what shook me. I said, they asked you that? He said, yes, they asked me that. I said, do you think they ask white people that? And he just couldn't answer. I don't think he didn't want to answer, probably. He did not want to answer. But also, I remember in very, very often at the airport, the most racist airport in the world, where they ask you the most racist question. For example, one of the questions, like she asked me, a security lady, she asked me, how could an Arab woman afford a bag like this? Or it goes to the idea that we must be stupid. How can we make money? How can we be successful? Or even a more degrading question, why she stripped me naked. She asked me to strip naked, and she was cavity search me. She asked me if I had plastic surgery, and I said, no, I did not. Why are you asking this question? I said, because Black people look different. And I was shocked. It's like, what do you mean? And she started making like putting and said, they have different noses, and I'm like, and I just looked at her. I said, you know how racist what you're talking about now? You know how racist what you're saying? We don't all look alike. White people don't look all alike. But
Right.
also, again, there's this, like, truly there's this, you could see that in also the society, the Yemenis, and who are from Yemen or from Iraq or from other places, the way they're treated in Israeli society are less than the people who came from Poland or came from Germany or came from Europe or from other places. Whiteness and supremacy is a thing. It's exactly identical. And I believe one of the reasons why these propaganda things are coming out now about blackness, it's connected to the activism in the African American community and the solidarity movement, but also it's connected to the book of Ta-Nehisi Coates. I think they freaked out when people in the Afro American community start making the link between Jim Crow, apartheid, and slavery and what Israel is doing. And I think this is the moment where they thought they're losing the narrative and they're losing support in America. And the only way they can garner that support or dominate the narrative again is with propaganda. This is how they export their fascism.
That is such an important point. I mean, all your points you're making are important, but this idea of right as the solidarity movements are getting stronger, we saw that in Ferguson. We saw that with all the delegations.
Yes.
We've seen that, with all of the activist groups, and, they've all mentioned Palestine and shown solidarity with Palestine. And then Ta-Nehisi Coates, the most decorated and celebrated writer in American culture right now, writes a book at considerable risk, considerable professional risk. He writes a book that connects these dots for us. And suddenly we're getting tweets and TikToks and videos. And it's not new information. What they basically do is continue to trot out the same it's one poorly researched article in Gulf News. It's one propaganda paper that argues that Black people are so poorly treated and they're caged and it's awful. And even
excuse me, Mark, Gulf News, is that the paper from the UAE? Well, if they want to talk about racism, let's see how they treat basically their Indian workers, their Pakistani workers, or any worker that come from Southeast Asia. It's a disgrace that they're using propaganda basically to drive a wedge between communities because they're terrified. They thought that Black people are the likes of Rishi Torres or the likes of Hakeem Jeffrey, who can go there and pretend he didn't see the discrimination. Hakeem Jeffrey, Hakeem, his first name is Hakeem, which means doctor in Arabic. It's an Arabic name. And Rishi Torres, if it wasn't for them being, basically politicians, they would be treated like you and me.
Right.
Exactly like you and me. If they lived in Hebron, if they were born and lived as Palestinians in Hebron or in Jenin or Ramallah or Deir al-Balah, they would be segregated, discriminated against, killed and butchered and tortured and probably raped in prison if they were arrested.
Wow. It's tragic that that's a reality for Palestinians, and it's even more tragic that we somehow managed to ignore all of that, ignore all the violence of the genocide in Gaza, ignore all the violence that's been happening in the West Bank, from settler raids to unlawful arrests. And the only thing suddenly that the Zionist Hezbollah warriors can talk about is racism against Black. Suddenly they all care about Black people.
Yeah. They didn't care about Adnan al-Burish, the doctor who was tortured and stayed man and raped to death. They don't care about Hussam Abu Safie, another doctor who saw his picture entering basically the tank after for the only crime that he wouldn't abandon his patient. His own family, Ilyas, his son, yesterday released a statement saying that his dad is being tortured, a doctor is being tortured. If we normalize this butchery against doctors, medics, journalists, babies, civilians, the bombing of schools and hospitals, the Gaza formula will not stay in Gaza, and we will all become Palestinians. Whether you live in Ferguson, whether you live in Denmark, we will all become Palestinians. If we don't stop this genocidal machine, we will all become Palestinians. And mark my word, we will all become Black Palestinians.
That's right. Rula Jebreal, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's a pleasure to talk to you as always. I always learn so much. We appreciate you. We love you. Stay strong, my sister.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Everybody, that was Rula Jebreal as we talk about the ceasefire that has been reached in Gaza between Hamas and Israel, but also all the messiness of that deal. And speaking of messiness, as we go from the sublime to the ridiculous, I want to talk a little bit about Drake. We did a little breaking news earlier, but now we're going to really get to it. We're going to really get to it. Drake, you know, I've been kind, but I'm gonna lay it down quite flat, as a great philosopher once said. Drake is the whitest of white men in this battle and in this response. Drake is the Karen of all Karens in this engagement. What I'm specifically talking about is the fact that 24 hours after withdrawing his lawsuit against Universal Music Group and Spotify, etc., et al., Drake is back in the courts. His team filed a lawsuit for defamation and harassment against Universal Music Group, saying that Kendrick Lamar in the song Not Like Us was engaged in defamation, and that Universal played a role in enhancing that through promoting it, etc., that created an environment where Drake was being falsely accused of being a pedophile, and where people were encouraged to engage in acts of vigilante justice against him. That's right. We still talking about the same song, Not Like Us. For us, it was a battle rap. For Drake, it was an opportunity. I want to talk about this, but, you know, there's people who know much more about this than me, so I'm bringing on the best in the business, the absolute best in the business, Naima Cochrane. First of all, it's good to see you. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, Mark.
Help me understand this. You know, people been telling me, I get two kinds of people. People who say I'm right on the money with Drake, and people say I'm the worst person in the world and I don't understand Drake's pain. Help me make sense of this.
So here's the thing. I've been a label executive. I was a label executive for almost 2 decades. I've been part of an A-list artist management team. I don't understand it. I don't understand Drake's strategy. I don't understand his end game. I have no idea what he thinks this is going to accomplish other than make him look like a toddler throwing a tantrum. Like, it really feels like he's jumping up and down mad at Lucien because Lucien was paying attention to another artist, right? And, you know, some people have said this is a tactic because he wants to leave UMG and go to another label deal, which I don't really think this is the way to go about it either. But to your point, the whole point of this Not Like Us is not Kendrick. It was Kendrick personally attacking Drake, but it was Kendrick attacking Drake's character and how he moves within the culture, right? It wasn't him attacking his rhymes. It wasn't him attacking his swag. It was really just about like, dude, I don't like who you are and how you handle hip hop. So in response to that, Drake decides to get litigious. Like, he decides to call his attorneys. And also, every rapper and singer and songwriter should be mad at Drake right now because this lawsuit won't go anywhere. But let's just say Drake won a lawsuit for defamation based on song lyrics. Do you know the liability that would open every label, every songwriter, every publisher up to? Like, that everybody should be mad at Drake. Everybody should be mad at Drake right now because it's insane. It's ridiculous.
I'm thinking now about Dre Day.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, for you youngins out there, some of y'all watching wasn't born yet. That was 32. Oh my God, that was 32 years ago. But when Dre Day came out, I mean, they were. Snoop and Dre were literally calling people
all kinds of names and accusing them of all kinds of it was just rough. And yes,
he literally said, "Put down the candy and let the little boy go."
Yeah.
So I mean, Easy E, Tim Dog, they all caught the chopper, and I'm not saying that's okay. I'm not saying that we should or I would actually say, like, let's not call people pedophiles, right? Let's not do that. But Drake, as you pointed out, says he's part of this culture. He's part of this tradition.
Right.
I've heard in interviews him talk about how important it was for him to get in battles and win battles to prove his hip hop bona fide. Do you think that was bullshit? Do you think he changed his mind, or do you think he's got sour, like he's just a sore loser?
I think he's a sore loser. I think his ego is out of control, and I don't know who's around him. Like we talked about Drake last year too, just kind of like where's his head at, where's his art at. But right now, I really want to know, where's your team at? Like who's telling you this is okay, right? And the bigger thing that I think Drake hasn't considered is that the reason that Not Like Us had the legs it's had, the reason that people will scream out A minor in a stadium or an arena 3-4 times in a row is because there was already smoke there, right? Like Kendrick is not the first person to say any of these things. He just put them together to a mustard beat so that we could all rock. That's why it caught fire. It's not Kendrick's fault. And I don't think Drake is really taking the time to actually reflect on like, oh, people really aren't rocking with me. They really like, maybe I need to change some things. Instead, you're like doubling down on the corniness, right? So it's like, even the pedophile accusation, like, my dude, you had a whole interview years ago about how you and Millie Bobby Brown were texting back and forth when she was 13 years old. Like, these are stories. This is why, so, and right now your artwork for your Australian tour is your avatar when you're gambling, who is a little girl with blonde, what I'm saying? Like, it's just, my dude, like.
He's not reading the room.
Go talk to the lady, Drake. Go talk to, or the man, go talk to a professional, work this out, get a journal. You know what I'm saying? Like, go for some long walks, go to the beach, I
think we need to do all that. Drake said, you said something interesting, which is use the word corny. You see it as corny. It sounds like I see it as corny. I know lots of people that do, but Drake seems to be like Donald Trump in the sense, I only mean it in one sense, and that he inspires very strong feelings.
Yes.
And has committed fans and committed enemies. And even though everybody I talk to don't like the way he's moving, there seems to be just as many people somewhere else that I don't be at that rocks with him.
To your point, somewhere else where we don't be at, they ain't us. Like, the people, not for nothing, the people who defend Drake just keep making the point that just keep making Kendrick's point to me.
Yeah.
To me, he still has a very loyal fan base, but it's not.
But that's what I'm wondering about. Like, if a lot of times artists change when the money dries up, when the stadiums are empty, when, the album sales aren't there anymore. But Drake's going to continue he's a huge artist, even at the end of this year, which is clearly his worst professional year ever, reputationally,
right,
and culture-wise. He's still at the top of the list. He's still right up there with everybody else.
Yeah.
So does Drake have the kind of market motivation to act different?
Unfortunately, in terms of just pure sales and money, no. But the thing about it is that Drake actually does seem very concerned about his perception amongst his peers, and again, amongst the culture, right? Like, you want to be champagne poppy, and you want to, you want to have an Aaliyah tattoo, and you want to wear all kinds of original pieces that were owned by different artists who have since passed on, who are so important to our canon. You care a little bit about what we think about you. So I think that for him, even though like he still has 19-year-old white boys, from Middle America who are riding for him, and like, DJ Academics and DJ Vlad and, other people, whatever. It is important to him that like his peers, he's losing the respect of his peers. His peers are not defending him, supporting him. That's going to start to affect his output, because who are you collaborating with? Like, collaborations are his bread and butter. you know, what does that look like in terms of who you're on the road with? Like, it's going to start to have an impact. It doesn't yet, but there's only so much time. Like, relationships and collaborations are the core of artistry. And if you don't have that, you can't move but so far forward.
So I don't want to psychoanalyze Drake too much, but I got to a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
He's losing the respect of his peers. Does that make it easier for him to construct this narrative like he does in Fighting Irish Freestyle, where he can just say, I don't fuck with none of y'all. Y'all all disloyal. So he can now, he doesn't have to wrestle with their criticism because he's already dismissed them as fake and cowards and disloyal. And yeah, I mean, it seems like, am I overthinking this? Or
no, he can say it. Everybody knows, like, it's like saying you didn't break up with me, I broke up with you. He can say it. We all know what happened. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the thing. Right. You can say whatever, Drake. We were all there. Everybody was there. Like, everybody was there. You know, consumer brands were there. Libraries were there. Like, Duolingo was there. Everybody was there. Like, we all saw it. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, we all saw it happen. Right. We all participated. We all saw it. Amazon was there. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can say whatever you want to. The NFL was there. Like, and is about to be there again. There's also a theory that he's trying to get Kendrick, or either Kendrick to pull Not Like Us from his NFL set list, or get the NFL to block Kendrick from performing Not Like Us from his set list because of the legal drama around it. That's
what I'm assuming. That's literally my theory since November when he filed the first suit was he wants to create enough messiness, enough dirt, enough smoke, enough confusion, enough fear that the executives say, you know what, it ain't worth it. Do all right.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Do all your songs, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? But what you're not going to do is Not Like Us. You can do the whole new album, whatever, do your thing, right? But we don't want to hear that. I had thought that we weren't going to hear the whole song anyway. I thought we would just hear like a musical interlude.
Yeah, it's not a halftime show friendly song.
No, not for the Super Bowl.
Like, you know, yeah.
So, like, the Super Bowl is extra. I mean, after Janet Jackson, they were Brad before Janet Jackson, but after Justin Timberlake did awful, treatment of Janet Jackson, the FCC is extra on top of the executives. It's a family friendly show, and they want to make sure of it. So I can't imagine a stadium full of people going wop 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 wop. Right. But the other problem is you could say, well, he could do a clean version, or he could do just the third verse, or he could. But the problem is, this song is like, it's like the Macarena. Like, everybody knows every word. He ain't got to say it.
Right. Exactly. That's the thing. He could just do dun dun dun, and the crowd would just rock. You know, the song is so much. The other thing is, if Drake would just shut up, like for 30 business days, right? First of all, if he could just sit down and be still for just like a minute. The song is so much bigger than him at this point. The song is about anybody who's your op. Anybody who is a hater, who you don't rock with, who you're looking at sideways. It's so much bigger than him. He keeps inserting himself back into it, right? And
I mean, that's the whole third verse. I mean, it's tough when you got the whole third verse about him.
I know you got the third verse, and that part is about it. But the thing is, it became anthemic beyond the beat.
Fair.
And
that's true. Like Dre Day. Like, I don't think about Dre Day as a Tim Dog, Easy E this and
right. It's just you firing off at anybody who you really don't.
That's real.
Sucker, right? Who think is a Mark Buster. But like, so for this though, Kendrick is also very savvy. He knows what he's like. The man, actually second to Drake, had the highest selling hip hop tour of all time last year. So it's not like he doesn't know what to do on a stage. So I mean, again, the ploys to me, though, are so transparent. Even if they work, nobody's going to give him credit for it because it feels like bish assness. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if I can say that, but I said it. Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it feels very whack. It feels very whack. And it feels very like it's not hip hop. Like, this is so not hip hop. None of this is hip hop. And like, Call Your Lawyer ain't hip hop. So again, I think that Drake has lost some face value here. And I don't know how he regains it, regardless of what Kendrick performs, regardless of what UMG does. And I love that UMG's response to everything he does is basically like, what? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's basically like,
right,
you can't be serious. Like, all their responses are basically like, you can't be serious right now. You know, so it's, I don't know where this goes. I've never seen anything like this. I'll say that first of all. I've never seen anyone so committed to just losing face value. And like you said, he'll still make money. He'll still have fans. But like, do you love, and I think, but then it's like, do you love the money or do you love the art? So like, if you really love the art, you're hurting right now, regardless of what your income looks like. But I don't know where Drake's heart is in this. And that is the whole crux of the conversation.
So one more question for you. How does this end in terms of the label relationship? I know, I mean, he wanted 600 million, 700 million, got 400 last time.
Yeah.
This can't be helping him make, I mean, it seems like this just makes him marketable.
It's not helping. And not only is it not helping, it's giving UMG the chance to come to the table and say that his brand is damaged, right?
Right.
And also, Kendrick Kendrick doesn't have the same level of output that Drake does and has had. Not that I think that Drake could sustain that level of output moving forward anyway, but Kendrick is also like a very big UMG property, right? So it's not like Drake is really trying to force them to choose, it feels like, and that would be really silly for any label, any major label to do, especially publicly, especially when you're asking them to choose against the artist who is currently about to go on a major tour and headline the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't think he's doing himself any favors. I think he's hoping that this will actually it's kind of like get under Lucian's skin. It's kind of like the kid who acts out so his father will pay attention. I feel like though he's actually just wearing people's patience. You know, labels don't love litigation. It's not fun for them. And especially coming from their own artist, I think they're just as quick to be like, you want to leave? Go. Like, be out. Bye. You know, and it is I think Drake is overplaying his hand because he is one of the biggest, you know, artists on Universal, right? But Universal has a board, they have shareholders, like they have other people they have to answer to. It's a publicly traded company. You can't play around like this with a publicly traded company. They will cut you out quickly. Yeah.
Easily. I had to laugh when I looked at the lawsuit and Drake in the lawsuit accused Kendrick of anti-Semitism. Because
which is like now it's about you being Jewish, fam. Nobody even said anything about that.
Right, because he called him a colonizer in verse 3. I mean, it's sort of ironic that his team associates that with colonizing. But I don't think Kendrick was thinking anything about his Jewishness. I don't think anybody's attacking his Jewishness. Again, it felt like he was just, I'm gonna throw everything against the wall.
He's reaching. Yeah. And I think also, like, not only is he reaching, but I think that you know, listen, Drake has never downplayed his Jewish heritage. I believe he was bar mitzvahed, if I'm not mistaken. It's never been a question. It's not something that he's played up either, but he's never, you know, denied it or hidden it or anything like that. However, when a Black American talks about colonizing, we are talking about white people, period, full stop.
Yeah, that's it. It's very obvious.
Especially when he's talking about somebody going to Georgia. We talking about white people. That's right. White people.
And he broke in the whole, I mean, he literally breaks down what he means and why. There was absolutely no way to read any other way.
All of it. I think that Drake is reaching for pain points and things that he feels like will sway the industry in his favor. I don't believe for a second that Drake actually believes there was anti-Semitism in that. I think he thinks that might get people on his side who maybe even haven't been paying attention, you know, because that is a very that word inspires reaction, right? Right now, especially. But it wasn't again, clearly in context, there's nothing about it that speaks to that. And none of this has even really been about the fact that Drake himself is biracial. Or his mixed ethnicity or any of that. It is about his behavior, right? It is about the way he moves within Black culture, not so much his actual racial makeup.
Yeah, nobody cares about that.
Yeah.
There's plenty of biracial rappers. There's plenty
I mean, shoot, Cole is biracial, you know, so it's like it's not about that. And he's never said it's about that. It has been about his behavior. He has spelled it out quite plainly. And anybody who pretends, and also like, it's not like white people aren't allowed in hip hop either. Like, so that's never been a question. But how
or Jewish rappers for that matter. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, if we think about like my man from Third Base,
yeah,
you know what I mean? If we think about Lil Dicky, I mean, there's enough, you know what I mean? There's enough. Action Bronson. I mean, there's enough, right? So anyway, and I'm not even gonna get into the shines of the world. I mean, you know, there's a way that hip hop's not even thinking about that.
Right. It's not about that. But it is about, like, you can be a Karen without being like a full out white person. You're moving like that. Like, that's how you're moving. And to your point, like you said in the very beginning, being like, I'm gonna call my lawyers, withdrawing one lawsuit and filing another one the very next day. It's some super white man behavior. Super white. It's very much, do you know who my father is behavior. It's wait till I get done with you behavior. It's you're gonna regret this behavior. You know,
right? Yeah, it's
here too. Like, it's that. You know what I mean? Like
all the stereotypes and of white people. Again, this isn't about Jewish people. It's about white people.
Like, he might as well have on some chinos and some dock shoes, and you know what I'm saying, like a polo with some little whales on it. Like, it's very like he's very Chad. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's very that.
Yeah. And that to me is who he is at the core. That's who he is at his core.
Yeah.
And it's sad. It's sad and it's frustrating. Anyway, we're gonna keep watching this. Who knows? Tomorrow he might withdraw and put out another lawsuit. Who knows? It's Drake.
It's a mess.
We'll have to wait and see. Naima, thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for teaching us at night school.
Always.
All right, y'all. That was the legendary Naima Cochrane, and she is so many things. She's a professor. She is a journalist. She's an industry veteran and exec, and she is a music savant. And I'm always glad to talk to my sister. Thank y'all for joining us tonight as we talk to Naima and Rula. I'm grateful to both of them for being here, and I'm grateful to all of you all for sharing time and space with me here. So thank you for watching Night School. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. That's right. Hit the like button. It increases our social media reach. It helps us fight them YouTube algorithms, lets them know that corporate media ain't the only game in town. Also hit the subscribe button. It expands our social media footprint so that we can get the content out to more people and we can get it out faster. And of course, if you're so inclined, hit the join button. Look, it's January 15th. We're 15 days into the year. By the way, shout out to all the AKAs. Happy Founders Day to the Sisters of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. It's January 15th, and we're building, we're growing, we're putting out the material every night. We put out the content every night. I'm doing my best here to make this happen. I could use your support. So please consider hitting the join button and becoming a monthly paid subscriber to the channel. A member, you get a membership, you join and become a member. Bronze membership start at $3.99 and they go all the way up. I'd love if some people could join today. I'd love some people who are bronze members, if they could become silver members, or silver could become gold. Just think about it, y'all. But I know some of y'all can't make that commitment right now. It is a crazy time. It's a crazy economy. I get it. So I'm asking you to maybe make a one-time payment tonight. Is there a heart in the house tonight? Stand up. We get somebody here to go to Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle and drop a little something for night school tuition. If you drop $1, I'm grateful. I promise you I am. That's all you got, $1, I am grateful. If you drop $1 million, I ain't gonna lie, I'll probably be a little more grateful, but $1 million would be amazing. It would allow us to fund the channel for the year, really more than that, and allow us to do a lot of amazing work and a lot of amazing growth. So someone out there who is uber rich and wants to support independent media, you'll drop something in our Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. If you want, you can even do it in bits, if you could drop $1 million, you could do like 100,000 a month, or was it 80,000 a month? I don't know. You know, I ain't good with math, but y'all figure it out. Or you could drop something in the middle. You don't have to drop $1 million, and you don't have to drop $1. $10 would be the ideal amount in my brain. If everybody watching tonight, that's right, if every single person watching tonight would have dropped $10, we'd be able to meet our financial goals for the month. Everybody watching right now who can hear the sound of my voice would have dropped $10 in Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. We would meet our financial goals for the month. I ask you sincerely to consider it, family. Please, please, please consider it. But any amount we'll do. We're grateful for all of it. We're grateful for your support. We're going to continue to build and fight and grow and give you independent, radical, Black media. We're going to continue to give you stories from the Middle East. We're going to continue to give you stories about the reparation struggle. We're going to continue to give you stories about education. We're going to continue to give you stories about pop culture. We're going to continue to do the work that needs to be done until we get free. All right, family. I'll see y'all later. Peace.